Okay, so today we're diving into something pretty heavy, a new report from Rowadari, the human
Mhm.
rights organization.
Right, yeah.
They work in Afghanistan, and this report is all about civilian casualties and other, human rights issues there in 2024.
Yeah, their annual report really dives deep into what's going on the ground.
Exactly. And we're going to try to break down the main points, like what are the trends they're seeing, what kind of data are they working with, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it really paints a stark picture.
Yeah, so let's start with, well, I guess the worst of it, the civilian casualties.
Right.
Rawadari reports 544 deaths in 2024.
Wow.
Yeah, and that's broken down to 403 men, 40 women, and 101 children.
Ugh, that's heartbreaking. So many children.
It is, and on top of that, they're reporting 234 injuries.
Okay, and is there any information about, like, the breakdown of those injuries?
Yeah, so that includes 118 men, 7 women, 60 children, and then 39 that they couldn't identify.
Right. Yeah, in the chaos, it can be hard to get a clear picture sometimes. And what about the causes of these casualties?
So they break it down into a few main categories.
Okay.
Targeted bomb attacks, and that includes both explosions and suicide bombings, but also a lot of it is from unexploded ordnance, like leftover landmines and things like that.
Yeah, that's a problem that just doesn't go away, even after conflicts end.
It's true. And then, of course, there's the targeted and extrajudicial killings,
Right.
the ones that are deliberate and, well, yeah.
So who are the main victims in all this? Who's being targeted?
It's kind of a mix, but the report highlights former government employees and their families.
Right, of course.
But also, a lot of women and children are caught in the crossfire.
Yeah.
They also mention tribal elders and then, anyone who is seen as an opponent or a critic of the Taliban.
Okay, so it's like a mix of sort of specific groups and then just kind of broader anyone they deem a threat.
Exactly. And, when you look at the numbers, there's actually a kind of a strange trend.
Okay, how so?
The overall number of civilian casualties specifically from targeted bombings, it actually decreased in 2024.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, by almost 28% compared to 2023.
Hmm. So that is a bit of good news, at least.
It is.
But I'm guessing that doesn't mean things are getting better overall.
No, unfortunately not. That decrease in bombing casualties it's overshadowed by some pretty big increases in other areas.
Uh-oh. Like what?
Well, casualties from landmines and unexploded ordnance, that jumped by over 51%.
Wow, that's a huge jump.
It is. And then, those mysterious targeted and extrajudicial killings, those saw a slight increase overall.
Okay.
But within that category, targeted killings of former government employees, that went up by almost 10%.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and even worse is the killings of civilians who were accused of, collaborating with the Taliban's opponents.
Right.
That number has doubled.
Doubled.
And then, to top it all off, enforced disappearances, where people just vanish, those have gone up by 70%.
Oh, man. So it's like, yeah, one specific type of violence is down, but overall it feels like things are getting worse and scarier for people there.
It does, yeah. And then, on top of all of that, there's the issue of arbitrary detentions, which is a whole other thing that Rawadari digs into.
Right. Yeah, I was going to ask about that.
Yeah, so they're reporting a really big increase in this, too.
Oh, no.
In 2024, they documented 885 cases of arbitrary detention.
885.
Yeah, and that's a 42% increase from the year before.
Wow. That's a big jump. And who are they detaining?
Well, it kind of follows a similar pattern to the casualties,
Yeah.
meaning a lot of former government employees, critics of the Taliban,
Yeah.
people accused of being part of anti-Taliban groups, civil society activists, journalists, that kind of thing.
So basically anyone they see as a potential threat or opponent, right?
Seems that way. Yeah.
And were there any groups within that saw like a particularly big increase in detentions?
Yeah, actually. So detentions of former government employees went up by 20%, which was, 142 cases.
Right.
But then the biggest increase by far was in the detentions of people accused of collaborating with the Taliban's opponents.
Oh, wow.
And that number doubled to 282 cases.
Wow, that's alarming.
Hmm.
Is there any kind of explanation for that or like reason they give for that?
Well, Rawadari links it to something specific, the implementation of what the Taliban calls the promotion of virtue and prevention of vice law.
Okay, and what is that exactly?
Basically, it's their set of social and moral regulations, how people should behave, what they can and can't do.
Okay, so what they're saying is that the way this law is being enforced is leading to more arbitrary detentions.
Exactly. They say the enforcement is often done through coercive and violent methods.
I see.
So arrests and imprisonments, that kind of thing.
So it
Oh,
sounds like things are really, getting
yeah.
more restrictive and more dangerous in a lot of ways.
It's true. We see this decrease in bombing-related casualties, which is good. But then there's this rise in deaths and injuries from landmines, more targeted killings, more disappearances, and then this huge jump in detentions tied to this enforcement of social regulations.
Yeah, it paints a pretty complex picture of what's happening there. It's not, just one thing getting better or worse. It's this kind of shifting landscape of human rights concerns.
It is. It's a lot to take in. And it makes you wonder, with these trends, the changing forms of violence, this increased use of detention, what does it mean for the future? What does it mean for the safety and the basic rights of people in Afghanistan?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but it's definitely something we need to keep paying attention to.
It is. It really is. So much to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Of course.
And to all of you listening, keep thinking about this, keep learning, keep asking those tough questions about how we can maybe help improve the situation. It matters.